Imagine living in a world where every man, no matter how powerful, no matter how faithful, eventually faced the cold silence of death. But then one man broke the cycle. He didn't die. He wasn't buried. He simply disappeared. Genesis records it with chilling simplicity. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. No grave, no farewell, no explanation, just silence and mystery. But what really happened to Enoch? And why has his disappearance haunted history for thousands of years? Tonight, we uncover the story of the man who escaped death itself. Before the great floodwaters swallowed the earth, before Noah built the ark, humanity was multiplying. Sons and daughters filled the land. Men lived for centuries, their names written in the ancient record like echoes carved in stone. But as life multiplied, so did wickedness. The world was slipping into darkness. Corruption spread like poison in the veins of humanity. Violence grew in the shadows, and whispers of judgment stirred in the heavens. It was in this world, in this age of long lives and longer sins, that a man named Enoch was born. He was the son of Jared. He became the father of Methuselah. And in the sacred line from Adam, Enoch stood as the seventh generation, a number that carried the weight of completion, perfection, mystery. Now, the genealogy of Genesis 5 reads like a funeral toll. Adam lived and he died. Seth lived and he died. Enosh lived and he died. Mahalalel lived and he died. Each life, no matter how long, ended in the same cold conclusion: death. But then comes a name, a story, that shatters the pattern. The scriptures say, when Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him. Do you hear it? Do you feel it? Every name before and after closes with the words, and he died. Yet for Enoch, death never came. His name, his story is different. He lived, he walked with God, and then he was gone. No grave, no farewell, no mention of death at all. Just this strange, haunting phrase: he was not, for God took him. And that is where the mystery begins. If you believe that faith still changes history, if you believe these stories are more than ancient text but a living warning and a living promise, then pause for a moment. Do not let this story pass you by. Subscribe now, because what you are about to hear could shift the way you see life and even the way you see death. From the very beginning, one truth echoed across generations: death was inevitable. Adam, the first man, formed by the breath of God himself, lived 930 years. Yet the record concludes with those chilling words, and he died. Seth, his son, carried the line forward. He lived 912 years, and he died. Enosh, 905 years, and he died. Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared. One by one, no matter how great their years, the ending was always the same. Their stories were long, but their endings were short. They lived and they died. Death was the great equalizer. It respected no man's title. It bowed to no man's strength. It claimed kings and peasants, prophets and sinners alike. In this world, death was not just natural, it was inevitable. But then, in the middle of this unbroken chain of mortality, one man stood apart: Enoch. His story breaks the rhythm. Where others faded into the grave, Enoch simply vanished into the hands of God. Why? Why would one man be exempt from the fate written into every human soul? Why did the curse of death halt in its tracks for him alone? To understand the weight of this mystery, we must see the world Enoch walked in. It was not a world of peace and harmony. It was a world unraveling. Humanity was multiplying, but with each new generation, sin grew stronger, louder, bolder. Violence spread across the land. Blood cried out from the earth. Idolatry took root in human hearts. The days were dark and judgment was drawing near. It was into this darkness that Enoch dared to walk with God. His faith stood in stark contrast to the world around him. Where others bowed to idols, Enoch bowed to the living God. Where others chased the corruption of their age, Enoch clung to righteousness. Where others lived to die, Enoch lived to walk in step with his Creator. But what does it mean to walk with God? The phrase is simple, but its depth is profound. Walking with God means intimacy, to know His heart, to speak with Him, to live every moment as though God Himself were at your side. Walking with God means obedience, to turn away from the temptations of a world drowning in sin, even when everyone else follows the current. Walking with God means consistency. Day after day, year after year, choosing faith over compromise until your life itself becomes a testimony. This was Enoch's life. In a world where corruption reigned, he chose communion. In an age where evil multiplied, he chose faithfulness. And perhaps that is why his story is so unique. Perhaps God took him not simply as an act of mercy, but as a statement, a divine interruption, a sign written into human history that those who walk with God are never truly claimed by death. The writer of Hebrews gives us a glimpse into this mystery. In chapter 11, verse 5, it says, "By faith Enoch was translated so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had translated him." For before his translation he had this testimony that he pleased God. Did you catch that? By faith, Enoch was spared. Not by strength, not by power, not by the longevity of his years. By faith. A faith so deep, so pure, so unwavering that God himself interrupted the natural order of mortality. But the question remains, why Enoch? Was it judgment upon the wickedness of his generation, showing them that their lives would end in graves while faith would rise beyond? Was it mercy, sparing him from the violence and corruption that was consuming the world? Or was it prophecy, a foreshadowing of a greater promise yet to come? We may not have every answer, but one thing is certain. Enoch's walk with God marked him as different. And when the world closed its eyes on him, he was no longer there. Would you dare to be that different? Would you stand apart from a world drowning in corruption, even if it meant being completely alone? Comment below. Would you dare to live differently? Walking with God was not easy in Enoch's day. His faith was not applauded, it was ridiculed. His devotion was not celebrated, it was despised. Imagine it. Every direction he turned, he was confronted with corruption. Families bowed to lifeless idols carved from wood and stone. Men filled the earth with violence, taking what they desired, spilling blood without remorse. Wickedness was not hidden in corners, it was flaunted in the open. And there, standing against the tide, was one man, one voice, one faithful servant who refused to bend. But do not mistake his faith for comfort. To walk with God meant to walk apart from men. Isolation was his companion. Loneliness was his shadow. Each day, Enoch watched as those he loved grew old. Each week brought the sound of mourning. Each funeral reminded him of mortality. Each grave was proof of humanity's fate. And yet, Enoch believed. He clung to a promise unseen. While every burial dug deeper into the soil of despair, his faith reached higher into the heavens. The ancient traditions give us glimpses of Enoch's struggle. The book of Enoch, though not found in most Bibles, paints him as more than a silent walker. It calls him a prophet, a man who warned of judgment, who spoke of God's coming justice, who confronted the wickedness of his time. And in the New Testament, Jude confirms this truth. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, "Behold, the Lord comes with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all and to convict all the ungodly of their deeds." Think about that. While others enjoyed the pleasures of sin, Enoch raised his voice to declare judgment. While others mocked righteousness, Enoch stood as a prophet of truth. It could not have been easy. He must have faced ridicule. He must have faced anger. He must have felt the piercing sting of rejection. And yet, he endured. He chose faith when doubt whispered. He chose obedience when temptation called. He chose God when the world demanded compromise. But imagine his inner battles. Did he ever feel weary? Did he ever wonder if his walk was in vain? Did loneliness ever press so heavy on his heart that he longed to give in, to simply live as the world lived? Enoch's struggle was not one of swords and armies. It was the silent war of the soul. The war we all face when faith calls us to be different in a world that demands conformity. And so the question comes to you. What would you do if the entire world was against your faith? Would you still walk with God, even if it meant walking alone? Would you still stand for righteousness, even if it cost you everything? Many of you are listening right now, fascinated by Enoch's story. You are drawn in by the mystery, the courage, the hope. But still, you have not subscribed. If this story stirs your soul and you do nothing, ask yourself, why hold back from truth? If you believe in the power of faith, act. Subscribe now before this moment passes you by. One day after 365 years of faithful walking, Enoch's journey with God reached its climax. It did not end in sickness. It did not end in weakness. It did not end in the cold silence of a grave. One day, his walk with God did not end on earth. It ended in heaven. The scripture is breathtakingly brief. Genesis says, Enoch walked with God and he was not, for God took him. The Hebrew word is lakach. It means to take, to seize, to carry away. It is not the language of death. It is not the whisper of decay. It is the sudden action of God himself, reaching into human history and pulling his servant beyond the reach of mortality. For the first time in human history, death lost its grip. Enoch was gone. No funeral, no farewell, no body to bury. The people searched, but he was not found. The earth had lost him because heaven had claimed him. This was not the last time God would act in such a way. Centuries later, the prophet Elijah would also bypass death, taken up in a whirlwind of fire, carried by the chariots of heaven. But at this point in history, Enoch stood alone, the first man to defy the grave by God's hand. But what really happened that day? The mystery has stirred hearts for millennia. Some believe it was a literal bodily translation, that Enoch was taken, body and soul, into the eternal presence of God. Others wonder if it was a hidden relocation, a divine removal from one realm into another, shielded from the corruption that would soon be judged by the flood. And many see it as a foreshadowing, a prophecy in flesh, pointing toward a greater hope. The resurrection, the rapture, the day when death itself will be swallowed up in victory. Whatever the explanation, one thing is undeniable. In Enoch, God broke the cycle. The chains of mortality snapped, the power of death was interrupted, the grave was denied its prey. For the first time, humanity witnessed the possibility that there is something beyond the grave, something greater than the dust, something that even death itself cannot hold back. So I ask you, if you could be spared from death itself, would you be ready? Would you walk with God so closely, so faithfully, that he could call you into eternity without warning? Tell me in the comments what you believe about Enoch's fate. Was it a miracle of translation? A hidden mystery? Or a glimpse into our future hope? Your answer matters, because the story of Enoch is not just about him, it's about what could one day happen to you. Enoch may have vanished from the earth, but his legacy has never faded. His disappearance was not an ending, it was a beginning. The writer of Hebrews includes him among the great heroes of faith. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. In the sacred hall of faith where Abraham, Moses, and Noah are remembered, Enoch's name still shines as proof that faith moves the hand of God. The letter of Jude tells us something even more remarkable. Enoch was not just a man of silent devotion. He was a prophet. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all and to convict the ungodly of all their deeds." Think of it, centuries before the flood, generations before Israel, long before Christ, Enoch declared the coming of the Lord with thousands upon thousands of his angels. His voice echoed judgment, but also hope. His prophecy declared that evil will not last forever, and that one day righteousness will triumph. Jewish tradition treasured his story. The Book of Enoch, though not part of the Bible for most Christians, shaped how many in ancient times viewed the mysteries of heaven, angels, and the final judgment. And Christian tradition remembers him as a model of intimacy with God, a man who walked so closely with his Creator that he simply stepped across the threshold between earth and eternity. Enoch's story is more than a historical curiosity. It is a testimony, a living witness that intimacy with God is stronger than death. It is a whisper from the ancient past, telling us that the grave is not the final word. His disappearance is not just history, it is prophecy. It points forward to a greater promise, resurrection, eternal life, and Christ's victory over the grave. It foreshadows the day Paul wrote about, when we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. Enoch is a glimpse of that hope. He walked with God and was not, for God took him. And so he stands as a reminder that one day, for those who walk by faith, the same victory will be ours. Death will be defeated, the grave will be empty, and we too shall be with the Lord forever. But here is the question that lingers in the silence of his story. Do you believe it? Do you believe that death is not the end? If you believe it, then don't just sit and scroll away. Don't let this story pass you by. Subscribe now and share this video. Let someone else discover the hope that Enoch's story still whispers today. And if you won't, then tell me why in the comments. What holds you back from believing? What keeps you from embracing the hope that has carried saints and prophets for generations? The story of Enoch demands an answer, and so does your soul. Enoch, the man who vanished without a tomb, the man who walked with God, and whose steps ended not in the dust of the grave, but in the glory of eternity. His life was short by the standards of his age, only 365 years, while others lived nearly 1,000. But it was not the length of his days that mattered. It was the depth of his walk. And when his walk was complete, God himself reached down and carried him home. Enoch's story is more than a mystery in an ancient genealogy. It is a message written across time. Death does not have the final word. The God who took Enoch is the same God who will one day raise those who walk by faith. The question is not what happened to Enoch. The question is, what will happen to you? Are you walking with him? Are you living in such a way that when your final day comes, death will not be your end, but your beginning? Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Because Enoch's story is not just about the past, it is about your future. One day, the trumpet will sound. One day, the dead will rise. One day, those who walk with God will step out of time and into eternity. Will you be among them? Or will your story end with the words, "And he died"? If you believe that God still defies death, if you believe his promises are true, then act now. Subscribe right now so you never miss these truths. Share this video so someone else can awaken to the hope that death cannot destroy. And if you refuse, if you scroll away in silence, then at least be honest. Comment below and tell me why. Why do you hold back from faith? Why do you turn away from hope? Why do you let the mystery of Enoch slip through your fingers without an answer? The man who walked with God left us with a question that every heart must face. And tonight, that question is yours. Will you walk with God, or will you walk alone?